You already know what procrastination is. You're doing it right now. But knowing what something is and understanding why you keep doing it despite hating yourself for it are two completely different problems. Most productivity advice treats procrastination as one thing, like laziness with a fancy name. It's not. There are at least 10 distinct types, each with a different cause, a different psychological trap, and a different way out. Knowing which one you're dealing with changes everything. Number 1, perfectionism, procrastination. This is the version where you don't start because you can't start perfectly. The project sits untouched for 6 days because you haven't found the exact right approach yet. And starting wrong feels worse than not starting at all. The mechanism is a misplaced risk calculation. Your brain treats an imperfect attempt as evidence of inadequacy. So avoidance feels like self-protection. What it actually does is guarantee the worst possible outcome, a missed deadline or a forever abandoned project, which is objectively worse than a messy first draft. The fix isn't to lower your standards, it's to separate the starting standard from the finishing standard. Your first draft doesn't need to be good. It needs to exist. Give yourself explicit permission to produce something bad on purpose, and you'll find that bad first drafts almost always turn into decent second drafts once the blank page stops being the enemy. Number 2, overwhelm procrastination. The task isn't one task, it's 47 tasks wearing a trench coat, and your brain refuses to engage because it can't find an entry point. This happens most with projects that feel large and undefined. A business plan, a thesis, a difficult conversation you need to have. When the brain can't identify a clear first physical action, it files the whole thing under think about later, indefinitely. The way through is aggressive decomposition. Take the overwhelming thing and ask, what is the single next physical action? The one you could not work on the proposal. Send the email to confirm the meeting time. The goal is to make the task so small that refusal feels embarrassing. Most people skip this step because it feels too simple, but that's exactly why it works. Your brain doesn't resist work, it resists ambiguity. Number 3, fear of failure, procrastination. As long as you haven't tried, you haven't failed. This is the logic that keeps talented people stuck indefinitely, because the gap between your potential and your output stays entirely theoretical as long as you never test it. Submitting the application, publishing the work, asking for the promotion, all of these carry the risk of a concrete no, and your brain prefers the comfortable fiction of unlimited potential to the uncomfortable reality of a specific outcome. The cruel irony is that non-attempt is itself a failure. Just one you can psychologically dress up as a choice. The practical intervention here is to explicitly decide that the cost of not knowing is higher than the cost of rejection. Rejection gives you information. Avoidance gives you nothing except years of wondering. Number 4, decision fatigue, procrastination. You've made 30 decisions today before lunch, and now the task in front of you requires one more, and your brain simply won't. Decision fatigue is real and neurologically documented. The prefrontal cortex, which handles deliberate reasoning, depletes with use, and by 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, asking it to tackle a complex task is like asking a phone at 4% battery to run a video. This type of procrastination isn't a character flaw. It's a scheduling error. The solution is ruthlessly mechanical. Do your hardest cognitive work in the first 2 hours after waking, before your inbox and other people's priorities consume your mental bandwidth. If the important work consistently gets scheduled for the end of the day, it will consistently not happen. Number 5, boredom, procrastination. Some tasks are just tedious. Updating the spreadsheet, filing the documents, writing the routine reports. There's no existential crisis attached. No fear, no perfectionism. You just don't want to do it because it's boring and your phone is more interesting. This version is underrated in its destructiveness because it's so mundane. The boring tasks pile up, create friction in larger projects, and take 20 minutes of actual work, but 3 weeks of low-level guilt. The most effective solution is implementation intentions. Schedule the boring task for a specific time and pair it with something tolerable. A playlist, a podcast, a location you like. Your brain resists the abstract task, but is much more willing to do the expense report while listening to something interesting at 10 a.m. Wednesday. Specificity removes the negotiation. Number 6, resentment, procrastination. You're not avoiding the task because it's hard or scary or boring. You're avoiding it because some part of you is furious that you have to do it at all. This shows up most in tasks assigned by someone you don't respect, obligations that feel unfair, or work that doesn't align with what you actually want to be doing with your life. Resentment procrastination often gets misdiagnosed as laziness, but the person doing it usually has no trouble executing on things they've chosen and care about. The fix requires honesty. If the resentment is about a specific task, identify whether it can be delegated, renegotiated, or eliminated. If the resentment is structural, meaning the whole job or relationship is the problem, then no productivity hack will fix it. Because you're not procrastinating on a task, you're procrastinating on a bigger decision. Number 7, anxiety, procrastination. This one doesn't feel like procrastination, it feels like a stomach ache, a vague dread, a sudden urgent need to reorganize your desk. The task triggers genuine anxiety, not about failure specifically, but about the emotional experience of doing it. Writing a difficult email, having a conflict conversation, going to the doctor about something you're worried about, your nervous system treats these like threats, and avoidance is the threat response. The problem is that avoidance amplifies anxiety over time. Every day you don't send the email, your brain recategorizes it as more dangerous. The intervention is exposure, but structured. Commit to doing the anxiety-producing task for just 5 minutes without any obligation to finish. Anxiety usually drops once you're inside the task. The anticipation is almost always worse than the thing itself, and your brain needs experiential evidence of that to update its threat assessment. Number 8, timing procrastination. Conditions will be perfect soon. When the kids are older, when work slows down, when you have more money, when you feel more ready. This version is particularly insidious because it mimics rationality. The reasons sound legitimate. You are genuinely busy. There will genuinely be a better time. Except there won't, because life doesn't create windows of convenience. It creates an endless sequence of obstacles with different names. The person waiting for the right time to start the business, write the book, or change careers is usually waiting for a psychological feeling of readiness that will never arrive independently. Readiness is a consequence of action, not a prerequisite for it. Every person who has done a hard thing reported not feeling ready when they started. Number 9, reward proximity procrastination. Your brain is bad at valuing distant rewards compared to immediate ones. This isn't a flaw in your character, it's a structural feature of how the limbic system processes time. Studying for an exam in 4 weeks loses every single time to watching one more video right now. Because the reward from studying is abstract in future, and the reward from the video is immediate and certain. Behaviorally, the fix is to close the reward gap artificially. Working out is unpleasant, and the health benefits arrive in months. Putting $5 in a jar every time you work out, or only allowing yourself a specific pleasure after completing the aversive task, creates a proximate reward that your primitive brain can actually evaluate against the alternative. This sounds childish until you realize that your dopamine system is in fact not making sophisticated long-term calculations. Number 10, identity procrastination. This is the deepest one. You're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding the version of yourself that would do it. Starting therapy means admitting you need it. Applying for the competitive program means taking yourself seriously enough to try. Building the business means telling people you're an entrepreneur. And what if you fail and they remember you said that? This procrastination is protecting an identity that feels safe. Usually an identity defined by potential rather than action. The person who never tries remains, in theory, capable of anything. Potential is comfortable, execution is irreversible. What makes this type resolvable is recognizing that identity follows behavior, not the other way around. You don't become a writer and then write. You write, and eventually the evidence is undeniable. Start acting like the person, and the identity catches up. The feeling of being that person arrives after the behavior, sometimes years after, but it arrives. Every procrastination type described here shares one structural feature. The avoidance feels better in the short term and worse in every other term. Your brain is not broken. It's making a locally rational choice that creates a globally terrible outcome. The intervention for all of them is some version of the same move. Make the cost of avoidance more visible, make the first action smaller, and remove the negotiation. You will never feel like doing the thing. Motivation follows action, not the other way around. The only people who consistently execute are not more disciplined or more inspired. They've just stopped waiting for conditions that don't exist.